Hello, my name is Nancy. I'm with the Kingston Handloom Weavers and Spinners Guild here in Kingston. We have a studio on the second floor of the Tett Center, and we've been an active guild in Kingston since 1948. Together with our 85 members, if you look in our studio, you will see a whole range of equipment for learning to spin, weave, felt, dye. There's an extensive library, and most importantly, you will see people, most often working together to create beautiful things. To share with you today, we've decided to offer a small project as a simple weaving project, but it certainly does not have any limitations. And once you consider some of these basic skills, you can extend, explore, and go on your own. There are some examples of other weaving that we do on the looms. There's tea towels, scarves, things to wear, things to use in your home on a daily basis. Color is a big part of what we do, so and also using natural fibers. I'm more of a spinner, so I'm very pleased to have a number of fiber producers within our Kingston area and access to good fiber to spin. I'm going to be using a combination of hand-spun fiber as well as commercial yarns. These materials that you need, you will easily find in your own home. We chose to offer weaving a small mat. A small mat can have many reasons. So there are some samples that we have woven. The red mat, good for your favorite pottery mug and your hot beverage, keeps it off the table. Another small mat to pick up the colors of a specialty decorative item. There are mats that don't need to be very wide. This one started out to be, it could be a bracelet, it could be a bookmark. I'm opting to actually add jingle bells to it, and it's going to be a doorknob decoration. Then there are mats that just much prefer to be hung up. They can hang on the wall, they can hang in a window, but they're all made in the same way that I'm going to show you today. So let's get started. First we need to build the small portable loom, and I find that I start looking at everything in my house with a very different view. As packaging comes in, I'm looking and setting aside pieces of cardboard. You want something that is very firm, not easily bent, and very smooth. So I often will just put it aside, not sure what I want to use it for. It can be any size. This little loom has been used many, many, many times by beginning weavers, and it's still good. So you put the time into actually cutting and building it, measuring it, and it can last for many different projects. So the one I will just show you quickly. I've tried to create the process in such a way that you can see the steps that I take. This is a piece that interested me, but I realized that with the cutouts, I was not going to be able to use it in a vertical position, but it does interest me to use it more like this. It could become a placemat. It could become one side of a bag. I need a new cover for my tablet, so that might be the perfect size for that. So, once you've found your cardboard, the base for your loom, you're also going to need a ruler, a good ruler that is longer than the piece of the cardboard so that you can easily and clearly measure. Measurements are easy to read. I need a pencil and a pair of scissors. That's what I need to get started. So I have, first of all, taken the cardboard, and because of the cutout part, I've measured off and drawn a line so that I know that's the outside boundary of my loom. I then measured on both sides about a quarter, 3/8 of an inch down to make a line so that as I make the cuts for the slits, they will be of a consistent depth. I've done the same thing on the other side of the loom, drawn that line so that I know how far down I can cut. I've also, just for my own thinking, marked the center of the loom. I'm not sure if that will be important to me later on, but it's nice to know where that center line is. So again, I'm using my ruler, and whether you use metric or imperial measurements, doesn't matter, but be consistent. So I believe I have chosen to use imperial, and I have measured off and drawn, let me just get back to my spot here, drawn some lines along at every 1/4 inch, all the way to what I term to be the edge. The outside edge of my loom. I'm then going to use my ruler crosswise and make sure that they line up straight with the marks on the other side of the loom. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm marking my cut lines carefully and clearly. Some people are comfortable using a box cutter or a cutting knife. I prefer to use scissors, but that's just a preference. Okay. It is important that the two slits are going to line up across, because once you warp the loom, most often we like our warps, the warp threads, to be parallel to one another. But we're good. Okay. Now I'm just going to take my scissors, and they're fairly strong. I will cut carefully so that I don't go beyond that guiding line, and make the slits. Okay, so the concept of weaving is that there are a set of fibers or yarns going in one direction. They're known as the warp. And here on the loom, table loom, you can see those warp threads that are carrying straight back. As I said, they are most often parallel, but not always if you want to do some really special kind of weaving. So we're going to need to put the warp thread on here. For a warp thread, you're looking for something that's very strong. So if you pull on it and it breaks, it's not likely something that you want to be using for your work. There's no point in spending your time getting this ready and then finding that you have to start over again because something has broken. I'm going to do a small weaving just to get started and show you how this can work, so that I can take it through from beginning to end. So I take the end and I make a bit of a slip knot so that I can tie it over the end. And as I said, I'm not going to do the full width, so I'm going to start here, I think. And I'm going to stretch it straight across to the other side. Make sure that I'm going into the same one. So I'm just going to count over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's what I did from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now I'm just going to go behind and back out to the front. Then straight across to the slit on the far side. Behind. Those slits are a good depth, so they will hold that warp thread for me quite steadily. Back up to the top, around behind, across, around behind. I will maybe just slow down a little bit because if it's new, it seems like, what is she doing? So I'm just going in behind. I hold it with my thumb so that it is under tension, staying taut, while I get it through that loop back around to the front. I'm going to go straight across the loom, over to the next slot. Through that slot, it's holding it for me so that I can look behind, hold it with my finger, and slide it into the next slot. And I'm going to tie these two together just so that they hold for me. Some people will put a piece of tape just to hold it until you're finished the weaving. I'll just put a knot that we can deal with later. So, step one, we have a simple loom, board loom. One more thing that you may have noticed on the small one is it is helpful to have these supports just underneath at either end. These ones have been glued in. You don't need to necessarily glue them in. You can just, as long as your support is wider than your actual warp that you're going to use, you can lift it and just slide it underneath all of them. One at the bottom of the loom, and the purpose of these is that it holds your warp threads up just a little bit so that as you are doing the weaving, it is a little bit easier to capture them. And there we have it. Those are the warp threads. If I run my hand across them, you can actually probably hear that they are nice and taut. There's no springy part or soft part for it there. So now we're going to need some tools to do the weaving. And again, I start looking at everything in my house with a different view. I'm going to need something to be able to take the weft over and over, over and under and over and under. And certainly one of the easiest ways to do is with my fingers. Sometimes I prefer to have something else. So I will use darning needles. Sometimes they come as plastic needles, which are good to use for some folks. I have other tools around my house. Sometimes a skewer can be very handy. Popsicle sticks, if you have one. I didn't happen to, mine are pretty wide. That's a bit much to be trying to do over and under, but if that is what works for you, this would equate to a shuttle that you would use if you were using a more formal, traditional type of loom. For young folks, you can actually tape the weft thread onto it, and I'll show you that in just a minute, because we do think about people of different ages making some of these, maybe people working together. If it's your very first experience, it can feel a bit awkward. I'm also going to need something to push the weft threads down, and so most often I use a fork. I'll show you how that works, but you can also, if you have something like this around your house, or this, I find them to be just great. With the traditional loom, you have something built in as a beater that does that for you as you move it. So I mentioned these are the warp threads. We now need the threads that are going to go over and under and form the pattern or the coloring. They are known as the weft threads. If I'm thinking about making something that is going to be hanging, I probably do want to think about where it has been knotted, that I will keep those knots at the bottom of my weaving and consider this to be the top of my weaving. I usually start weaving at the bottom and weave up towards the top. So that's, that's what I will do now. I just need to think about some colors to use with this one, and I see it does not have a warp stick in behind, so I'm going to add one just to help in manipulating those weft threads, and I will put one in up at the other end as well. I'm going to think about using some of these materials, some of these colors. And as I said, this is the bottom, so I'm going to think about this as the bottom. I'm going to measure off. If I use this whole length, that's going to get very tangled, so I'm just going to measure off what I think I can manage When you're weaving with a traditional loom, you're able to wind the bobbins and you get many, many yards on the bobbins and the shuttle before you need to change them. I think this will probably be enough. And I'm going to use if you get really interested in this style of hand weaving, there are certainly tools. There are wooden looms, or you can make a loom from a picture frame or a window frame, and you will find tools like this where it's basically a very shaped stick. It does have a hole in the end, so I can attach the fiber and it will help carry it for me a little more easily. So remembering that I'm thinking that this is the bottom of my loom, the bottom of my piece of weaving, and I'm going to weave. I'm going to start under and go and just use my stick to go under and over. And I'm going to pull it through, but I'm going to leave, for this first part, I'm going to leave a long tail because I'm going to do something else with it in just a minute. We'll keep a short fringe on this one at the bottom. So I'm just going to set that firm in place. Now, what's different from the last example that I did, I still have thread and I'm going to go back along the same way. And when I go back, I need to make sure that it came out over the warp thread. So when I go back, it needs to go under that first warp thread. And then I can just follow that pattern of under and over. And I get to the other side. And I'm going to hold that just as I pull it through. One of the reasons that I left this long piece at the beginning is I want to be sure that I am going to secure this so that when I take it off the loom, it doesn't start to unravel. I'm going to thread a darning needle. If you're comfortable with crocheting, you might crochet across with this. If you're comfortable with hem stitching, if you're familiar with hem stitching, you can do that. I'm going to just simply make sure that I'm going around the warp threads and up in. I'm going to catch it so that it makes a knot around that area, and then I will move on to the next one and go around the warp and up in just one row. Oops. A little bit more to play with. Okay, so I'm going around, up in, and as I slide it out, it will make a knot and anchor that end of the weaving. There are many different ways to do techniques in the fiber world. You may have other people that show you in different ways. Try them, learn from other people, and then follow what works best for you and your idea of what you're trying to create. Again, I'm just doing this so that when I take it off the loom, the bottom, the woven thread, the woven weft threads will be secured and won't start to slide down. After the final one, I will just make sure that I can take this end and just treat it as if it were a weft going over and under, back a few ways. Whoops, not being cooperative today. I can also do it at the end when I take it off, and I may choose to do that. But I'm just going to weave it back in and leave the edge. Okay, I think we probably need to just push these down again so that they are secure. So I had some other choices here. Thinking about this piece. I can continue with the green. I think I might start getting something ready with the blue. I can use more than one color. I think we have some examples where either as a stripe or where you have alternated, it mixes the colors. You can hold two strands together. If I wanted to create a color that was more suggestive of, say, the sky, I would perhaps hold blue and white and a little bit of gray together. So really, as you're weaving, those are the choices that you can make. I'm giving you some suggestions and options today. Really, the best way is to try it out. Don't be afraid to explore and see what you can come up with. And it's very easy. If you're not happy with it, it's very easy to take it out and start over again. Okay, I didn't cut much of that. All right, so if I want to add a new color, I am going to, I will start at the edge, and where the green one came out over, I want to make sure that the new color is going to go under, and I will follow that same pattern back across as if, oops, regardless of what color I'm using, this is the sequence that needs to happen so that it locks those weft fibers into place. When I pull it through, I'm going to make sure I leave myself an end. And when I come back, it's going to come back in the opposite direction. So it came out over the last warp thread, it needs to go start under. And I'm going to pull it through. I think I am now going to change colors, so I'm going to go just over that one and do the opposite pattern. I'm not really looking to make stripes with these two, just trying to maybe suggest something in nature that I might see, perhaps grasses by the edge of a pond. So the colors, they don't come in discrete stripes. In nature, they tend to be more blended together. A lot of my inspiration comes from nature, the way the colors at different times of the year present themselves. Okay, again, I've left myself a little bit of a hill so that I can push it down. I don't need to take that green one back. I can now move on with the blue one, and you'll start to see how it is starting to blend together. These yarns are both hand spun, probably as part of a demonstration. Our guild, we often do community demonstrations, and one of the ones that we most often do is the sheepdog trials at Grass Creek Park, which we demonstrate taking fleece off the sheep and spinning it and making it into things. Sometimes we dye it, sometimes we just use it as plain, as the natural fibers. Sheep and alpaca present us with many different shades of natural colors, which are really quite lovely. All right, and I think I'm going to alternate and take the green one back. I want to make sure that this last one is going to get captured on the edge so that I don't have a loopy edge. I'm thinking this is probably not going to be a coaster, but it might be. Okay, I'm going to leave these longer threads. I do need to go back at the end and weave them in so that they're not just hanging loose, but I want to keep going with an idea that has come to mind. As I said, it reminded me a little bit of the edge of the water. Just going to introduce an idea that so far I have been weaving straight and making sure that I push all of the weft threads down in a similar line, but we can start to make some shapes. Heading back the other way. So as I said, I don't always have to keep it flat. I'm going to start making some more textured threads. And I'll show you how I did that. I realize I went quickly. Decide where I want some of that texture to be, and I just lift and twist slightly so that it is not exactly smooth. And then when I push down with the comb, it makes more of a bit of a swirl. If I had more time, I might like to leave it sit overnight and see if I still want to add anything more. But for purposes of today, I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to leave, again, a fairly long tail. I may leave those on the sides, I'm not sure. Okay, it's handy to have either a dowel or a knitting needle when I'm thinking of taking this off. I'm going to make sure it's going to hang, so I want to make sure that I don't lose any of the threads at the top. They are just hooked on the back, and so I'm going to take my knitting needle and go through as if I were weaving, but it's not. But it is going to hold those threads for me so that when I take it off, they're able to have something to hang on. And I actually, that's all right, that's good. All right, getting ready to take it off. I can turn it over and where it went in behind, I can snip those, or if I can, I'll just push them off the, I guess I'm gonna have to snip them. The person who worked this one did a good job. They're pretty tight. I'm trying not to snip them. You can for sure, and then you need to tie them to secure them, but I'm hoping that maybe I can leave them as a loop. Okay, so making sure that I have that up there. I'm able to, one last one that's still caught. So now that I can lift it, I'm going to make sure that it stays on this knitting needle. And I'm just going to very carefully lift it so that it can come out of those other loops. If I turn it this way, you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just gently pulling See, this warp was well anchored, and once so there are some pieces that I need to weave back in. We don't want those ends. I guess I can decide which is the front and which is the back. If I have a preference as to the way the colors have gone, the way the textures have gone, I'm thinking this is maybe more so. And I will probably look to twist these and put them on a loop, perhaps even tie a knot in them, similar to what has been done with this one in terms of putting it on the dowel. This one has been tied onto a branch found outside, and you can see how it's just been twisted and tied on. This one has been done with a dowel. And so those are the things that I will need to do. And I can just simply do it by taking in a section at a time, tying them together. It will keep them a little bit more secure in the weaving. Again, I come to these pieces at the side. Do they add to what I'm looking for? Or do I want to perhaps weave them in? I think in some cases I like this part going down the side, and so I will simply tie them in a way that they are secure. The weaving that has been completed is secure. This one needs to be part of that. Okay, that's not what I want, so I will be redoing that one. Okay. Here's one that needs to be woven in, and I can, if I have a crochet hook or if I have, I did have a needle, I can just make sure that I am tucking that in out of the way and clipping it off. So I just look for a place where I can weave it in and back out. And I can take my scissors and very carefully cut it close to, but making sure that I don't cut any of those other important pieces so that it's out of the way. There's one more that probably needs to be woven in. I'll just do that one quickly. Often you're trying to follow the pathway of going in, whether it's following the pathway of under and over of a previous row. So it doesn't actually unravel that particular color, but secures it instead in a way that doesn't disturb the overall effect. And again, I can cut close to, but not cut the fabric. do have a dowel, but it's too long, so if I don't have a branch, I will look to cutting this dowel a little shorter. I can twist these, and this bottom rod is much longer than I would want it to be. So it's a work in progress. Now I've just secured those side pieces in a decorative way. I may choose to trim them once I figure out sort of the overall effect that I'm looking for. I may choose to trim them so that they're more even, and see what it looks like once it's hanging, because that will be different. So again, this has been a little bit of a work in progress, but an example of perhaps how you might experiment and explore with weaving using a small loom. You can make something that is quite carefully woven and flat and use it in your home. You can use something that is equally carefully woven. This is tabby weave in and out, but by using different colors has created different shapes and the illusion of perhaps trees, perhaps a forest, and this one has a lot more texture and contains. But they were all made using the cardboard looms like this. So give it a try, and please share with us when you have something that you, either a question or share with us what you have created. We'd love to see it.